We finished verse 33 in our last session. I'm going to begin with verse 34 of Surah Al-Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس. And tell them the occasion when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, fasajadu. So they all prostrated, illa Iblis, except Iblis. God did it, arranged this occasion in order to help people understand the scheme of life. So he wanted people to know this particular incident. And he says to his prophet, in order to help them understand our scheme of life, let them know, in addition to what we've already mentioned, in the previous verses, this particular incident as well. This incident happened after the earlier one when the angels asked the Almighty, why was he creating humans? We don't know. It's not necessary that there is a sequence. It's an independent occasion, more likely to have happened after the previous one. So that's the first thing. When we said to the angels, now when the Quran says angels, it's implied that within that vast mammoth gathering, there were both angels as well as jinns, because as we shall see later, at least one participant amongst them was Iblis, who was a jinn according to the Quran. And this style of presentation is there in the Quran, in Arabic, and in all languages, which is described as the style of ala sabil al-taghlib. Not very long ago, we used to say that, we used to describe things in the gender of masculine gender, the verbs, the pronouns, and everything. The Quran does it without meaning any disrespect to women. That was a style. So that's the style of presentation here as well. And it means angels as well as jinns. So that story that, it were only angels, but this bloke, Iblis, was such a good jinn that he got the privilege of being a part of the assembly of angels. That's not true. He was a jinn, and both jinns and angels were asked to prostrate. Aba was takbara. So the Quran says that he refused. Aba was takbara, showed arrogance, wakana min al-kafirin, and turned amongst disbelievers. So the idea obviously was that when they've been asked to prostrate, it's a test of whether they are going to take the Almighty's instructions seriously. It was a test of their obedience. And it was also meant to let humans know that, angels prostrated before you by the will of the Almighty. It would be a shame if you prostrate before anybody else. So, try to understand your status. All right. So it goes on to say, wastakbara, and he showed arrogance. This is the reason mentioned. Arrogance means that you look down upon others as inferiors. You think the other people are less than you. And that is one important reason why people don't accept the truth. Because obviously, truth comes from somebody else. And you think that you are better than him. And why should I accept it? So in this case, Iblis thought that I'm superior to Adam. So even though the message was coming from the Almighty, he had this false sense of superiority. And that is the most important, the most dangerous of all the evils, problems that humans can go for, humans can fall into. So he was arrogant. Pakana minal kafirin, and he turned amongst disbelievers. Disbelievers, kafirin, I'll talk about it later. I keep talking about it, does not mean non-Muslims. It means those who reject the truth knowingly. You know what the truth is and you reject it. Can you imagine if you understand kafir with these meanings, then you would worry about yourself instead of accusing non-Muslims of being kafirs, who, by the way, many of them are not Muslims because our performance is poor. So what a shame that we have misused this Quranic expression to mean it to um, suggest a meaning which is completely different from what the Almighty mentions for it. وَقُلْنَا, next verse, وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ, and we said, Adam, stay you yourself and your wife al-Jannah, in this garden. It's very likely that it was a garden in this world. I mean, Jannah most certainly is obviously used for the garden that's going to be the abode, the place where people who will be successful in this life, they are going to get the privilege of living there. But that place has not as yet been created. It's going to be created on the day of judgment. يَوْمَ تُبَدَّلُ الْأَرْضُ غَيْرَ الْأَرْضِ وَالسَّمَاوَاتِ. So on the day of judgment, that's going to happen. The word Jannah in Arabic means garden. And the Quran tells us that as far as the unseen world is concerned, God has chosen to use metaphorical expressions, mutashabihat. That is why the paradise where people are going to live forever, the good people, has been described al-Jannah, the garden, and it's metaphorical. So it was a garden that was chosen by the Almighty. And he said that you and your wife, you live in this garden. وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا, and feel free to eat unhesitatingly from wherever you desire. However, وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ, but don't come close to this tree. فَتَكُونَا مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ, or else you will be amongst the unjust. So this tree was, as they say, the prohibited tree. It's described in Surah Taha, Surah 20, in verse 120, as Shajaratul Khuld, the tree of eternity. And obviously, it's a metaphor that has been used. You learn from the Quran that this metaphor has been used for this purpose to suggest the process of procreation. So the Quran tells us that Satan exploits this weakness within us humans, that the ability that God has given to us, to both men and women, to procreate. And this procreation process can be done in the right, legitimate manner between a husband and a wife, which the Quran talks about this relationship as a relationship wherein both are garments unto each other. So Shaitan wants to deprive of us of that garment and to become shameless. So that was the tree which the Almighty asked both to stay away from. And Shaitan, Satan, exploits that weakness. And the Almighty said that if you're going to come close to that tree, the trouble is that fatakuna min zalimin, in that case, you will become unjust from amongst those who are unjust. And I've already mentioned that the Quran is very clearly stating that an unjust person is a person who does evil knowingly and therefore is unjust to himself. He's not unjust to anybody else. He is being unjust to himself. That is a great message. I say it's a revolutionary message that, when you are harming somebody else, you are ridiculing, you are making false statements, you are accusing somebody else. Uh, you're not harming that person, you're harming yourself. That person, God is going to come to his rescue if the other person is good, right? But whenever you do something wrong knowingly, you're being a zalim, you're being unjust, and to no one else except save yourself. Okay. فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا. So what happened was that, but Satan caused them to slip out of it. That is, he enticed them to eat from the fruit of that tree by convincing them that, God has stopped you only because if you eat it, you become eternal. You'll get eternity. And he mentioned that, he stopped you, or else if you were eat from it, you'll become like angels. So it's stuff like this that Satan started whispering into the ears and hearts of both Adam and Eve. And they both slipped, both of them. Unlike in the case of the Christian understanding that it was Eve who caused Adam to slip, the Quran very fairly states that it's both of them. Azallahuma. وَقُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. And we said, go down. You are enemies of each other. So once this sin was committed, then it was decided that they're not going to stay there anymore. And notice was served to them that you're leaving this place, but be sure you are each other's enemies. That is Iblis, Satan, and Adam and Eve and their progeny. That was the one important lesson that was designed, planned to be taught through this experiment, through this particular experience of that garden. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌّ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. And you will have upon the earth a place of settlement and provision for a while. That is, it's going to be a temporary place for you to live, and it's going to be a trial. And be sure that this Iblis and his progeny, his company, is going to be your enemies. And that's what this battle of life is all about. That's what we are right now in the middle of. That's what happens when we go for Hajj or Umrah. We go there and it really is a jihad, battle against evil, against Satan. We pelt stones at Satan. And the idea is that, you ought to know that within you, there is this evil. Iblis is able to whisper into your hearts, your minds, evil thoughts. You know what is good from what is bad, but then there is an external agent which is able to influence you, and you've got to fight your way out. And this particular story has actually been mentioned so that it continues to remind all humans that our forefathers, they went through this experience, they got embarrassed, and from then on, It is an open declaration of war between us humans and Satan. And Satan is the master of treachery, of designing evil thoughts, tricks, so that people should fight against each other. People should go against the Almighty's message, should commit shirk, should go towards obscenity, should become arrogant, and so on. And idiot humans, they feel that this is our decision, it's our point of view, and they become stubborn. So that is what happened at the beginning of the journey of human race. That is 37th verse. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ. Then Adam learned from his Lord a few words for repentance, and obviously, and repented to the Almighty through those words. فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ. So he accepted his repentance. That is, God accepted his repentance. Why? إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. Indeed, God, He is forgiving. He is, His mercy is eternal. So the idea is that man doesn't carry eternal sin with him. That's not true. These two claims of Christianity are both rejected in this passage. It's neither the problem of Eve that caused humans to be exterminated from the garden, nor is it that we are carrying an eternal sin. We sin because we have been given freedom. And at times we make wrong choices. When we make wrong choices, we realize, as somebody asked me this question, I mean, you go and keep doing wrong on and on. Why? Each time you do wrong, you know it's wrong. You've been given that ability to fight against it. So Adam and Eve both realized that what they did was wrong. So that was corrected. So God allows, we have been given this ability within our system to feel ashamed of the wrongs we have done. It's a great asset. Every human has been provided with this asset. Allow me to say it's the greatest asset, the most valuable of all assets that we have. And the person who has been deprived of it, not because of somebody else's undoing, because of his own misdeeds, is the most unfortunate person. And I keep telling people that sympathize with such people. They've gone. They've been destroyed. You're doing evil and you're justifying it. So, never ever justify something wrong. You know what is wrong. And one thing more, I don't want to go into the details of it. And I dare not go into the details of it. For God's sake, don't become such idiot fools that you start justifying the wrongs of others. Don't justify your own wrongs, and don't make somebody your ideal or favorite who is doing things wrong, and you're justifying them. You're destroying yourself. How can we destroy ourselves? Okay, so God allows this feeling of repentance, and you know what happens? God also gives you the words. I mean, He gave these words of repentance to Adam. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ. So Adam received, he learned from his Lord words of repentance. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. These words have been mentioned in Surah Araf, Surah number 7, because this story of Adam and Eve has been mentioned in the Quran probably 7 times, because it's a very important story. We need to read it over and over again. And each passage that talks about this story has something to add to it. I mean, there's a different flavor. It's not mentioned here in this story that Iblis was a jinn. It's mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, the 18th chapter. So, in the Quran, there is repetition, and repetition for good reason, but it's not mere repetition. Each passage that is apparently repeated in theme adds a lot more to what you already know. And these important passages, even when we read them over and over again, they have an impact on us. Verse 38. قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا. We said, get down from here, all of you. So this was a directive repeated. It has been repeated, although it's mentioned before, but repeated to tell that although expulsion was caused by sin, repentance has cleansed that sin. So now it's going to be the pattern in life. That's going to be a trial. Go there. Because you know now what the rules of the game are. You know what the challenges are. Now leave this place and face that challenge. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. In facing the challenge, if you need guidance, God will provide guidance. Not to all humanity, but to some part of humanity, so that they, on their own, deliver it to the others. So, فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. So when guidance comes to you from me, follow it. فَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ. For whoever will follow my guidance, فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. There shall be no fear of him for the future, nor shall they grieve for the past. This mention in the Quran, La khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun, is actually the description of the paradise, the life of the paradise. Because if you look at this worldly life, this life, there are two prominent problems. All humans, they are experiencing these two problems. We are either worrying about or fearing the future, or we are sorry about the past, grieving the past. These are the two problems which continue to be there with every human being. We had good experiences, we had relatives, we had good things, but they've gone. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future, so we fear it. The paradise is going to be a place where both these problems are going to be eliminated. So instead of saying that such people are going to enter the paradise, the Quran says they will have no fear of the future, nor any sorrows of the past. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. And those who will reject our signs, our verses knowingly, أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. They'll be residents of fire. I say knowingly, it's because it's quite obvious from the Quran. It makes no sense that you, oh my goodness, you accuse the Almighty of threatening that no matter whether you know what God's message is, what the true Islam is, if somebody doesn't agree with it, he is going to be thrown into hellfire. Can you imagine this is what Muslims believe? This needs to be corrected. We need to understand the Quran properly. Hum fiha khalidun. They will reside therein forever. I'm faced with this question, and therefore I'm answering it. Where somebody asked me that, how can God be quite as angry as to say that I disagree with the way some people behaved in the worldly life, that I'm going to roast them in the hellfire forever? If you want to understand the Quran, you've got to be open-minded. If you are a rigid person, you'll not be able to understand the Quran. Keep your mind open. Keep receiving questions, criticism. Keep reading the Quran. When I faced this question, I was speechless. And then I read the Quran, well, sometime later, I came across this verse in Surah Hud, Surah number 11, which said that this hell is going to be there, ma damatis samawatu wal ard, for so long as the heavens and the earth would stay, illa ma sha rabbuk, except for what your Lord would decide, which gives a very clear impression that it's going to be a project uh, which is going to stay for a certain while, a long while, but not forever, not eternity in the sense that we are aware of. On the other hand, the same passage clarifies, as far as the paradise is concerned, its eternity is what the Almighty has promised. May the Almighty enable us to understand His message properly, and may He enable us to follow it to the best of our abilities.